Here are the top stories for today, May 11, 2021. The Philippines now ranks second in terms of COVID-19 jabs administered in the ASEAN region. The vaccination drive is set to get a boost with the arrival of over 193,000 doses of Pfizer jabs. Relaxed restrictions, not so fast as experts push for a calibrated exit from strict quarantine measures to prevent a spike in COVID-19 cases. The Health Department confirms the detection of the B1617 coronavirus variant from India, which has been tagged as a global variant of concern by the World Health Organization. And Malacanang declares May 13 as a regular holiday in celebration of Eid'l Fitr, or the Feast of Ramadan. Good day, I'm William Theo. Welcome to the PNA Newsroom. Our top story for today, the vaccination rollout gains full steam as the Philippines is now second among Southeast Asian nations with the most number of coronavirus vaccines administered. Data from the National Task Force Against COVID-19 show that the country has administered a total of almost 2.5 million vaccine shots, more than 2 months after it started its vaccination campaign. It is next to Indonesia with 21,993,299 doses administered since its rollout began on January 13, and Cambodia at third with 2,284,788 since February 28. Worldwide, the Philippines ranked 41st out of 194 and 15th out of 47 countries in Asia. Meanwhile, the government will conduct a simulation rollout on handling, logistics, and transportation of the newly arrived Pfizer vaccine. The first batch of 193,050 doses of Pfizer vaccines from the COVAX facility arrived via a DHL plane at the NAIA Terminal 2 in Pasay City on Monday night. Health Secretary Francisco Duque III said the newly arrived Pfizer vaccines will be used for the inoculation of the healthcare workers, the elderly, persons with comorbidities. The jabs were immediately transported to the cold chain storage facility in Marikina City and will be distributed in COVID-19 high-risk areas within Metro Manila, Cebu, and Davao. Malacanang is hopeful that the World Health Organization's endorsement on Sinopharm would help speed up its application for emergency use authorization, or EUA, in the country. To date, the Food and Drug Administration has granted EUA to 6 COVID-19 vaccines from AstraZeneca, Bharat Biotech, Gamaleya Institute, Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer, and Sinovac.
Alam naman po natin na over the weekend, nag-issue po ng EUA ang WHO. At nagsalita na rin po ang ating kalihim ng Department of Health na ang DOH na mismo mag-a-apply ng EUA sa bisa nga po ng EUA na in-issue rin ng WHO.
Meanwhile, Roque admitted that the 1,000 doses of Sinopharm vaccines donated by China to the Philippines have yet to be returned to the donor. Despite ordering the withdrawal of the Sinopharm vaccines, President Duterte is expected to receive his second dose of Sinopharm 21 to 28 days after his first dose. The government will allocate about 500,000 doses of AstraZeneca vaccines in the National Capital Region, or NCR. This is a quarter of the 2 million AstraZeneca vaccines from the COVAX facility that arrived in the country over the weekend. Health Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergeres said the NCR Plus will get the bulk of the vaccines as it is considered as the epicenter of the disease in the country. Other regions, including Region 3 and 4A, will get the remaining 1.5 million jabs. NCR Plus, which includes Metro Manila and the provinces of Bulacan, Cavite, Laguna, and Rizal, may shift to less strict general community quarantine status by May 14. This, as Malacanang noted, an improvement in the country's healthcare utilization rates. Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque said it is possible to ease to a laxer quarantine status because healthcare utilization rate has been downgraded to moderate risk. However, borders will remain closed to prevent the spread of new strains of coronavirus.
Alam niyo po, ang tingin ko kahit anong classification ang irekomenda ng IATF, hindi pa po tayo magbubukas ng ating borders. Bawal pa rin po ang turismo at tanging ilang mga dayuhan lamang na meron pong mga investors visa ang papayagang pumasok. So hindi po magbabago yan, Art.
Meanwhile, Cagayan, Apayao, and Benguet, which were earlier placed under GCQ, have now shifted to Modified Enhanced Community Quarantine, or MECQ, from May 10 to 23. This after the said provinces noted an increase in the number of cases in their respective areas. The Octa Research Group urged the government to remain cautious in deciding on new quarantine classifications come May 15. Octa Research Fellow Professor Ranjit Rai said their group would support the government if it decides to extend the modified ECQ in the NCR Plus area. While it is also open to a shift to general community quarantine, the group said stricter monitoring of minimum public health standards in public and private sectors should remain in place as the average daily attack rate and positivity rate of COVID-19 cases still remain high. Meanwhile, molecular biologist and Octa Research Fellow Nicanor Austriaco said hospital occupancy will be below the 70% critical level by June if the current COVID-19 reproduction number is sustained.
Okay, so number one, we will support whatever government decides. Okay, what we're suggesting is caution. What we're suggesting is a calibrated, slow, exit strategy, so that we can sustain the trends.
Barangay officials are reminded anew to enforce community quarantine guidelines in their respective jurisdictions or face liability. During his talk to the people on Monday night, President Rodrigo Duterte said he could not let his guard down despite the drop in daily COVID-19 infections. He said barangay officials who failed to enforce the law should be punished, especially since their negligence could resort to an increase in COVID-19 cases in the country. This came after viral photos on social media showing guests bathing in a resort in Caloocan City that was supposed to be closed as the NCR Plus area is still under Modified Enhanced Community Quarantine.
You have to enforce the law. Yung barangay captain sa iyong lugar mo, you are the person in authority.
The Department of Health, or DOH, confirmed that the B1617 coronavirus variant from India has been detected in the country. Health Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergera confirmed this in a briefing today. The two cases of the variant were based on the result of a recent genome sequencing conducted by the Philippine Genome Center. The variant, tagged as a double mutant, was first detected in India in October last year and is the cause of the current second wave of the pandemic in the South Asian country, which has been seeing around 300,000 new cases and 4,000 deaths daily. The World Health Organization has classified this as a variant of concern, citing preliminary studies that show that it is more transmissible than other variants. The Philippines has earlier imposed a travel ban on passengers from India and the neighboring countries of Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, and Sri Lanka until May 14. Meanwhile, let's take a look at the latest global COVID-19 figures. Still to come, the Bureau of Immigration warns airlines to only board foreigners who are allowed to enter the country. And a former diplomat speaks up on the country's arbitration case against China. Details ahead. This is the PNA Newsroom.
Sa matinding laban natin sa Coronavirus Disease 2019, sugpuin din natin ang pagkalat ng fake news. Huwag magbahagi ng impormasyon na hindi tiyak ang pinagmulan. I-check mabuti ang source ng balita. Kumuha lamang ng impormasyon mula sa mga official channel ng Department of Health. Huwag magpadala sa maling balita, basta't sama-sama at laging handa. Kaya natin to. Isang paalala mula sa DOH, PCOO, KBP at ng himpilang ito.
The Bureau of Immigration reminds airline companies to ensure that foreign passengers boarding their Philippine-bound flights are eligible to enter the country. This as only foreigners with valid and existing visas are allowed. BI Commissioner Jaime Morente said foreigners who are not eligible to enter the country will be excluded upon arrival and will be booked on the first available flight back to their ports of origin. Airlines will also face fines and sanctions for allowing improperly documented aliens to board. Malacanang said President Rodrigo Duterte cannot be impeached over his policy on the West Philippine Sea. Presidential spokesperson Secretary Harry Roque shrugged off allegations by retired Supreme Court Associate Justice Antonio Carpio that Duterte supposedly committed betrayal of public trust over his stance on the sea row. Roque pointed out that the country never lost territory under the Duterte administration. He also said the president is also the country's chief architect of foreign policy. Roque dared Carpio to bring his case before the court if he believes Duterte violated the Constitution with his policy on the WPS. He said he is ready to debate with Carpio on whether Duterte's foreign policy resulted in derogation of sovereignty or the loss of territory. He also said he is ready to take on Vice President Leni Robredo and even former Foreign Affairs Secretary Albert Del Rosario if Carpio wanted to join them. A seasoned diplomat said the panel who went to the Permanent Court of Arbitration, or PCA, in 2013 to claim the Philippines' right to the Kalayaan Island Group cannot be considered an arbitration panel. In a video of a media forum in 2017, former Ambassador Rosario Manalo said it was just a paid Philippine panel that handpicked persons to present the case and that the arbitration was not set up correctly. Manalo said the Philippines' act of going to the PCA at The Hague in the Netherlands to challenge China's expansive claims in the South China Sea was what the United Nations Charter refers to as voluntary arbitration. She explains arbitrations are compulsory only under a provision of the United Nations Conventions on the Law of the Sea, or UNCLOS, but both Manila and Beijing opted out of the provision. In 2016, the tribunal ruled that China's claims are invalid, but Manalo said the decision does not bind anybody.
It's just a position taken by the Philippines, and with the arguments we're giving, ito importante at bakit importante sa atin sa Pilipinas. But that's, to me, an opinion of a plus for us. But it does not bind China nor anybody else in the world. Ngayon, kung magkakaroon tayo ng new process of settling the issue, we will. Kaya, in this point, tama si Presidente Duterte. Tabi muna yan, at at the proper time, ilalabas natin.
President Rodrigo Duterte has placed the Philippines under a state of calamity due to the outbreak of African swine fever, or ASF. Presidential spokesperson Secretary Harry Roque said the state of calamity is effective for a period of 1 year. The Department of Agriculture earlier reported that there will be a drop in agricultural production for the first quarter of 2021 due to the spread of African swine fever. Data from the Philippine Statistics Authority on the value of agricultural production showed a minus 3.3% drop in the first quarter of 2021. Livestock production, which shared 14.2% in the total agricultural output, went down by minus 23%. DA Secretary William Dar said their efforts to control ASF and repopulate ASF-free areas through the Bantay ASF sa Barangay and Hog Repopulation Program have yet to bear fruit. The Philippine Identification System, or PhilSys, may achieve its targeted 50 to 70 million registered individuals by the end of the year. National Economic Development Authority Secretary Carl Kendrick Chua said PhilSys is gaining ground with up to 6.4 million Filipinos having completed Step 2 of the registration process. Chua said that PhilSys registration even surpassed targets, with 77 out of 86 provinces undergoing Step 1, while some already proceeding with Step 2. As of May 3, a total of 33.4 million individuals have already completed Step 1, which started in October last year. Chua meanwhile said registration for Step 3 will start this month, noting that there were some who have already finished Step 3 and were already given their ID card. The online registration, which will resume after fixing some technical problems, is seen to further boost the number of PhilSys registrants. Up next, the country's anti-insurgency body has 6 new spokespersons, and Cagayan's Cross in the Sky is now open to local devotees. Back after a quick break, stay with the PNA Newsroom.
Pangalagaan ang sarili laban sa Coronavirus Disease 2019. Hanggat maaari, umiwas sa mataong lugar. Iwasang hawakan ang ilong at bibig, maging malinis sa katawan at ugaliin ang wastong paghuhugas ng kamay. Takpan ang ilong at bibig kung uubo o babahing. Umiwas sa mga taong nagpapakita ng sintomas ng coronavirus disease gaya ng lagnat, ubo at sipon. Magsuot ng face mask kung kinakailangan. Basta't sama-sama at laging handa. Kaya natin to! Isang paalala mula sa DOH, PCOO, KBP at ng himpilang ito.
You're still watching the PNA Newsroom. The National Task Force to End Local Communist Armed Conflict has designated 6 new spokespersons to help play its stand on several issues. The officials assigned come from the Armed Forces of the Philippines, Presidential Communications Operations Office, Department of the Interior and Local Government, Presidential Human Rights Committee Secretariat, Department of Transportation, and the National Commission on Indigenous Peoples. Earlier, AFP Southern Luzon Command Chief Antonio Parlade Jr. and PCOO Undersecretary Lorraine Marie Badoy have been designated as co-spokespersons of the task force. Under the new list, Parlade will serve as spokesperson for security sector operations, while Badoy will handle social media affairs, sectoral concerns. NTF-LCAC Vice Chair and National Security Advisor Hermogenes Esperon emphasized the need to designate 8 spokespersons due to the multifaceted, multi-layered nature of the task force. Farmers in Ilocos Norte are being encouraged to take up organic farming to improve food production and security. More on this and other news from the provinces from Lade Cabagani.
The provincial government of Ilocos Norte is encouraging more farmers to adopt organic farming as it implements its sustainable agriculture program. A special intensive program is provided to those who intend to apply organically based farming practices. Local officials hope to cover at least 5% of around 49,000 hectares of agricultural land areas for about 55,000 farmers in the province who can participate in the program. Aside from reducing the cost of farm inputs and producing healthier food, organic farming is seen to contribute to the country's agricultural growth and development. In Antique, milk produced by local dairy farmers in San Jose de Buenavista will be provided to school children in the province. The National Dairy Authority or NDA will start this month with a 50-day milk feeding program targeting 11,067 pupils. The NDA tapped Belison Multipurpose Cooperative as the local dairy supplier to DepEd district offices. This is a continuation of the program last year that targeted kindergarten to grade 6 pupils. Meanwhile, the Department of Agriculture in Region 12 has tapped local companies and other stakeholders to deliver more food supplies and other necessities to residents who are hit hard by the continuing COVID-19 pandemic. The DA is coordinating with several parties to help expand the rollout of its Kadiwa Community Pantry in other localities in the region. The agency started the initiative last week in the cities of Coronadal and Kidapawan and will continue this week in Tulunan, North Cotabato. Hundreds of residents benefited from the community pantries, which offered food supplies such as rice, vegetables, eggs, fruits, dressed chicken, fish, and other basic goods for free. For the PNA Newsroom, I'm Lid Kabagani.
The 16-meter-high cross in the sky perched atop the Black Hill in Piat, Cagayan is now open to local residents. The giant cross located near the famed Blackwater Lagoon is expected to lure tourists from outside the region once community quarantine restrictions are lifted. Visitors from other regions, especially the NCR Plus bubble, are not yet allowed for the meantime. Mayor Carmelo Villasete led the ceremonial lighting and blessing of the giant cross last Friday. Villasete said the cross would serve as a symbol of faith, hope, and love of villagers as they battle the pandemic. Meanwhile, the famed Piat Basilica Minore Church opened its doors to the Catholic faithful on Monday with limited seating capacity. Last month, the church was temporarily closed after an organist as well as 2 doctors and 11 other health workers contracted COVID-19. Heads up to our Muslim brothers and sisters. President Rodrigo Duterte has declared May 13, Thursday, a regular holiday in the country in observance of Eid'l Fitr, or the Feast of Ramadan. Unlike in previous years, Muslims will have to celebrate inside their homes and observe community quarantine and other measures as a precaution against COVID-19. Eid'l Fitr is celebrated for 3 days on different dates, each year depending on the sighting of the new moon in the 10th month of the Islamic calendar. In his Eid'l Fitr message last year, President Duterte enjoined Muslim Filipinos to be living examples of the Islamic faith as the world celebrates Eid'l Fitr while grappling with a health crisis. He expressed hope that the month-long Ramadan has helped the Muslim community stay strong and true to the goodness of humanity. Here's another look at today's biggest stories. The Philippines now ranks second in terms of COVID-19 jabs administered in the ASEAN region. The vaccination drive is set to get a boost with the arrival of over 193,000 doses of Pfizer jabs. Relaxed restrictions, not so fast as experts push for a calibrated exit from strict quarantine measures to prevent a spike in COVID-19 cases. The Health Department confirms the detection of the B1617 coronavirus variant from India, which has been tagged as a global variant of concern by the World Health Organization. And Malacanang declares May 13 as a regular holiday in celebration of Eid'l Fitr, or the Feast of Ramadan. Thank you for watching another episode of the PNA Newsroom. To check more news content, visit our webpage or head onto the Philippine News Agency's Facebook and Twitter accounts. For more stories about the government and how it serves Filipinos, look for these hashtags in all of our social media platforms and websites. We are shown on the pages of the PCOO and its attached agencies. Also, watch us on television on PTV4 and IBC13. And that's your daily dose of the biggest stories that you need to know from the PNA Newsroom. We tell stories that inspire change. I am William Theo. Good day. Stay safe, everyone.